Well, technically, I've only been recording for about 20 years on multi-track systems, but I got my start trying to figure all the stuff out long before that. Back in the ages of 5-6 years old, when I was just playing drums, we had these old mono tape recorders, and I'd sit out there and just record drums, playing with and whatnot. And then by the time I started actually trying to teach myself to play my father's guitar, I got to the point where I can compose simple compositions with it. I wanted to put it all together: guitars, bass, drums, and all I had at the time were 2 tape recorders and, of course, the guitar amp. So I'd record the drums on one tape recorder, and then I'd take them into my room. I'd set up the tape recorder next to the other one and have those both placed in front of the amplifier. And then I'd play, and on one, record the other, and I'd play a bass. And then I'd flop the tapes around and do the same thing, but now I'm recording guitar. And that's how I started out. But as time progressed, I tried to do better to get better sound, so I eventually progressed to using headphone outputs into line inputs on tape decks, and then when I got tape decks that had line in and line out, we'd go that direction with it. And eventually, 96 or so, the family got our first computer, and then I discovered it had a sound card in the back. So I started going from tape deck to computer, back to tape deck to computer. And each little step was a vast improvement of the sound. I also got access to a guitar multi-effects processor back in '92 that had just regular quarter-inch line inputs I can plug a guitar or a mic into and get it all set up that way. And I would hang the mic over a beam in the garage above my drum kit, and then I would just have to basically assume what kind of settings to set up for it with the EQ in the processor and the compression and so forth to try and hopefully get a good sound out of it, because I couldn't really hear anything through the headphones. The drums were just too loud no matter how high the volume was on the headphones. I think I blew out 3 or 4 pair of headphones because of that problem. But eventually, it was either late 90s or early 2000s, right when Tascam released their 424 Mark III Porta-Studio, I got one of those, and that was my first hands-on experience with a multi-track recording system. And it worked pretty well. I did 3 or 4 90-minute tapes, or maybe more, of just me goofing around, playing around on guitar, recording drums, things like that. And then I did a serious attempt at an album project with it. And it did alright, but it still wasn't able to make me sound or get me to the point where I sounded as professional as what we'd hear on modern radio. And what later I learned about it was really just me not knowing how to properly do the job, properly mix everything and set everything up for recording. I was still learning. And then in 2003 I got my digital system, and that's what I've had since and been building on it since then. And that's where I really started to learn how to properly set up for recording and mixing and of course mastering, because it gave me the opportunities to go back and redo things I had done that didn't come out that great without having to start over from scratch like you might have to on a tape system. And I got to the point where I can actually take everything I've learned from that and I can then transfer it back to using the old 4-track cassette. It's for those reasons that have gotten me to where I am today, as far as how I'm able to actually produce a great sounding record from people just working in small studio environments and don't necessarily have the best gear, don't necessarily have access to the best kind of studio gear, microphones, all that kind of stuff, or at least the most expensive. We can still make it sound great. And that's the reason why I say, I am the best at what I do. I firmly believe it when I say it. And it's because I haven't heard anybody in this region, in the Pacific Northwest, who can actually do what I do at the level that I do it. And what I'm getting at is, I predominantly work with independent artists in project studio environments. Project studios aren't necessarily known for the best acoustics. They're not necessarily known to have the best kind of gear laying around. And that's why most engineers in a project studio will just resort to using plugins on Pro Tools or Reaper or whatever to use MIDI replacements and a lot of editing stuff to fix everything that they couldn't figure out how to do or to make sound good in their environment. But that's the kind of environment I grew up with when trying to record everything when I started out. And so I'm still able to take real instruments in those environments and make a great sound with just the limited equipment that we may have on hand, whether it's just the handful of cheap microphones or a few really nice microphones, or not necessarily having the best room for the kind of acoustics you'd like to have out of your gear, so we set everything up so that your gear will be able to get the sound I want onto record, and then I can make it all sound the way I want it to, with just using some processing with EQ and dynamics, and then maybe some just effects process. That's why I feel I am the best at what I do, because I can take you and make you sound good without having a computer process everything, and then the computer turning around being the one that actually is performing your music with all the editing that you've done, with all the digital tuning you've done, and with all the MIDI replacements you've done. When you listen to something that I produce for you or any artist, it's them on the record. It's them playing the instrument. There's barely any editing being done. There's barely any kind of pitch correction that has to be done in post, any kind of replacement that has to be done in post, because I'll work with the artist right then and there beforehand while we're in the recording stage to not only set everything up to get a good sound from the start, but to make sure that if there are any issues with how they play, we fix that right at the beginning. So if I have to come and do a punch in to have them fix a section, that's what we do instead of just going through and editing it, because I'd rather have them actually play that section than me going in and just clicking on little tabs and having things pop up where I replace and replace and replace and tune and this and that, because it's really them playing and not me just putting in something for the computer to interpret how I want it to sound. Yeah, well, getting back to kind of what we were talking about before, yes, I believe that's why I say I'm the best at what I do here at F Studio.